and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Out the Mud Podcast with yours truly, Coach Benny, aka Coach B, aka, like I said, Money Making Mitch. Shout out to Paid in Full, my favorite movie of all time. I want to make sure I always let y'all know that you can follow us on all social media platforms. We on Instagram, out.the.mud podcast. We on TikTok, same deal, out.the.mud podcast. You can go and follow all the content on our website at otmthepodcast.com. And, we're going to be on any other, Spotify too. We on Spotify as well, at Out the Mud Podcast. So make sure that, anywhere you get your podcasts, on any streams, that's where you'll find us. You can catch all the oldest episodes, all the newest episodes like this one that will be uploaded coming shortly. But yeah, make sure y'all go follow that. Always appreciate the support as per usual. You know what I'm saying? I don't do this just for me. I do it for the ones that couldn't, for the ones that, want to speak on it, but just don't have the opportunity or the platform to be able to do that. So again, that's the reason why we created this whole thing, is to give the voice to the voiceless. So, I just want to make sure that I show some love to everybody that tapped into episode 13. The kind of the reboot, it was a little shorter one. This one might be a little bit longer, depending on, the mood, because again, I rewatch my podcast. I don't rewatch them a lot. I'm gonna just keep it a bean with y'all. I don't rewatch my podcast a lot. Like once I post it, I barely watch the podcast over again. I don't know. I just leave it up to y'all, and I don't even rewatch it. But I did go and rewatch episode 13, and I feel like my energy was down a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And again, this podcast, and you're gonna hear me say it a lot about controlling what you can control, and some things were out of my control in the first episode. So you know what I'm saying, I wasn't able to get what I was looking to get. It's no excuses. We don't make excuses, because they're just tools and incompetent which build monuments of nothing. And those who specialize in them are seldom good for anything but excuses. Shout out to my Greeks. So, it was a lot of things that was out of my control. But hey, we had to get through it. We made it work. And, but I felt like my energy was down, you know what I'm saying? And I'm going to be my biggest critic. So, if I feel like my energy was down, then I'm going to make sure I bring y'all more energy in this episode and in this pod, because, y'all deserve that. That's the least y'all can do. Or the least I can do for y'all, is make sure that y'all can feel me through this camera, whoever's going to be watching it. So, once again, shout out to everybody that supported the first reboot episode. Again, we're going to be doing this every Tuesday and Friday. Try to make sure I stay on, on time and stay consistent. Because again, that's another thing that we're going to hit on a lot, is consistency. Consistency is key. So we're going to make sure that we stay consistent with this, whether we have a guest or whether I'm just coming at you just live and direct as I am right now. Got to give a shout out again to everybody that helped bring this whole thing back. Shout out to, my people's coworkers that, looked out with the chairs. Shout out to Amazon for the banner. I got my water back here. We ain't got a sponsorship yet, so I'm going to put that to the side, make sure I get that out the camera. You know what I'm saying? We got the football over here, NFL, even though the season's over right now. But shout out to my Birds and all my Eagles fans, Bird game. But yeah, so really here's where we're going with this one tonight. We're going to do something a little different, not really something that's out of the norm, but we're going to definitely try to do something a little bit different. I was thinking a lot since I got back on and started doing these more frequently, since the first season. I was thinking like, okay, what am I going to really talk about? What are some things I want to hit on? And it was kind of something that I was thinking about over the weekend. And it's going to kind of go in like a little pyramid. So I'm going to start slow and work my way up. So I need y'all attention spans, for this one. So like I said, the first episode, if you paid attention, again, I'm going to give y'all a lot of more energy tonight. All right. That's the first thing. I'm going to make sure I give y'all a lot more energy. I'm going to make sure that I'm on point and you can really understand and feel me from where I'm coming from. But again, like I said before, and I'm going to say it in season 1, if you're not feeling me, if you feel like, this ain't going to be the pod for you, if you want to do something else with your time, I'm going to give you 7 seconds. Shout out to my pro fight tone, AZ, and all my Greeks. 28th house, West Virginia State. Shout out to West Virginia State. I'm going to give you 7 seconds to go and do something else. If you got to take care of some business, if you feel like, yeah, he ain't really saying nothing, or you don't like the hoodie I got on, you don't like, the way my setup is, Go ahead and do something else. It will not make me, I will not feel no different about you. We will still be cool after this. I understand you got something going on. This might not be the right time for you to listen to this. But if you still here after 7 seconds, you with me until this is over. So I'm going to give you 7 seconds. Rock out, do what you got to do. I'm going to set my timer now. 7 seconds starting now. All right, y'all. Y'all still here? All right, cool. Let's get to it. And again, shout out to the sponsors of Cutwater, the unofficial, official sponsor. You know, definitely sipping on that Cutwater right now. Make sure y'all can see that. Get that in the camera. You know, Cutwater, official, unofficial sponsor of OTM. These Jones will get you lit. 12.5%. I'll always cop the lime margaritas. That's just my favorite one. But you can find them in any one of your local liquor stores. So yeah, I was thinking about this over the weekend, and I was like, what can I really talk about, right? What can I really bring to this table in this podcast, you know, on the revamp? And I thought about, I do a lot of things in you know, I'm a former coach. I coached college for 5 years, and you know, I use a lot of coaching metaphors and coaching, you know, lingo in these podcasts. That's just me. That's just how I rock. So one of the things that, you know, the coaches and myself, we always talked about was, you know, we always talked about, like, with coaching, control the controllables. We talked about that. And then, like, a lot of times, and I always, and I don't know where this came from, you know, and it just kind of popped in my head, was I went back to my very first interview, my very first, like, live interview, as a coach. And, you know, the very first live interview, I'll never forget it. It was at IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. If anybody knows, they in the PSAC conference, Division II program, good program. You know, and shout out to Coach Tortella. We just call him Coach T. Shout out to Coach T at IUP, the head football coach there. He brought me down. So I had an interview. And in the interview, they asked me one question, and it was like, it was a question that kind of threw me off. It was the most basic question, but it like threw me off. And I'm gonna give you a reason why it threw me off. But they asked me because I was going for the receiver position. They had a receiver position open at the time. And he asked me, he said, first question, he said, Coach, you know, what's your philosophy on coaching receivers in the position? Like, what's your philosophy on the receiver position? And I was like fake stuck, because I was like, I mean, I know what the word philosophy means, and I, you know, obviously coached ball for a long time, so I know the position of wide receiver. I played wide receiver. And when he asked me, I gave a very generic answer. It was you know, oh yeah, coach, you know, I want to make sure my guys like me. You know, I want to, you know, make sure that, you know, I'm appeasable to them, that, you know, I test them. I you know, give them as much energy as I can give them, you know, and all this blah, 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 all new coach stuff. Cause I was still kind of new. It was like 2 years in, and they shook their head and they was like, yeah, that's what's up and all that. And, you know, and then they asked me to go on the board, and I went on the board. And to anybody that doesn't know that, you know, what that term means and how these coaching interviews go, basically, you know, in the interview process, they want to get to know a little bit about you, especially if you're going for like a position. They want to get to know a little bit about you, but they really want to know what you know. You know, they want to know, you know, make sure you're not no weirdo and you ain't out here doing nothing crazy. But the main thing is they want to know what you know. So they ask you your philosophy. And this was the first time I really had a legit like interview for a coaching position. They asked me my philosophy. They had me go on the board. I had to draw, you know, I think it was like a vertical concept play or something like that. One of our plays that I was at my former job, you know, that I was doing. So, but long story short, when he asked me that question, it threw me off, because I was like, my philosophy on coaching receivers. And I was like, you know, and I left the interview, and you know, after it was over, you know, I shook everybody's hand. He walked me out. He told me we'll be in touch. Long story short, I ended up not getting a job. It wasn't because I just bombed the interview. You know, he definitely told me some good things. You know how interviews go. They'll tell you, you know, some things that they liked about you, and they'll tell you some things you need to work on, so on and so forth. But that question stuck with me so bad, because I was like, my philosophy on playing wide. I'm like, what? And I kept thinking about that question because that question was almost like that was the nucleus of the interview. That was the nucleus of the interview. What is your philosophy on coaching receivers? And now, years down the road, I can give a very thorough definition of what my philosophy is when it coaches wide receivers, when it's about the position. Because philosophy is a mindset. This isn't the Webster's dictionary. This is just for what Benny, my definition. Philosophy is the mindset. Philosophy is, if you had to, when you look at a book and you look at the table of contents, it's broken down in steps. That's the philosophy. Where are we going? What is the end goal? What are you looking to get out of this? So then I asked the question to everybody, and I trigger that question and I trigger that story to say, it's so funny because like when you ask that question about what's the philosophy of like a position, I almost look at myself and say, well, what's my philosophy in life? What's your philosophy in life? What do you want to get out of life? What is your end goal? Right? A lot of times I think, and I always revert back to coaching. And because like the greatest thing about coaching, the single greatest thing about coaching, and shout out to all the coaches that I've been around, all the mentors that I've had in my life, from Coach Sherman to Coach Austin to, Coach Anderson, even going way back, Coach Simpson, in high school, Coach Tyson, Brogue, Grundy, Coach Alt. Let's go, Coach Monroe, Coach Shaw, who recruited me from West Virginia State. When I came there, I ain't even see the locker room and committed. Every coach that I've ever had in my life had a significant part of my growth and my philosophy for my life and how I wanted this thing to look. Right? So when I'm hearing that, like every time, every moment, every situation, every day that I wake up, I'm always thinking like, what is my philosophy for that day? What do I want to get out of this day? What is my end goal? Just like when they asked me that question, what is my end? When they ask me that question about what is my philosophy with coaching ball, with coaching receivers, they wanted to know what was my steps, what was my end goal, and how was I going to help them to succeed, and them meaning the players and them meaning the organization. So I asked you that question: what is your philosophy? What is your philosophy when it comes to your day-to-day operation? What are you looking to get out of this? Because to me, that question alone, to have that kind of impact the way it had on my life and on that interview, that changed the whole game for me and my day-to-day operation. Just that one question. And that's, to me, it was like, you get a lot out of these, and that's part of the reason why I started the podcast, is because a lot of times we, meaning us as society, we're too stuck on like, okay, you get an interview, right? It's hard as hell finding a job right now. It's almost impossible unless you know somebody that knows somebody. But when you go into these interviews and when you go to meet people and network, even if you're starting a business, what is your philosophy? What is your operation? How are you going to get from point A to point B? Even if it's a job, or even if it's something that you may not even be excited about, or you might just be doing off of a favor, or it might even be, or it could be a job that you really want. At the end of the day, what is your philosophy with that? Is it to know a certain area of the position? Is it to know a certain description? Or is it just to go in to put on a good face, that the way you can shake a couple more hands, or you could get a couple more business cards and get a couple more network? What is it? Because I feel like every day that you wake up and every day that you go about your day-to-day operation, you got to have a philosophy to it. And it all stemmed, and I thought about that over the weekend. It was beating constantly in my brain about that one moment when I was interviewing and he asked me what my philosophy was with coaching receivers. And from that point on, I got back in the books and I started to research every little nugget about the position. from the stance to start, to the route trees, to the run game. I was even looking at the science of it, because that question made me recenter myself, and it really brought me back. To be honest, it brought me back, because at that moment I thought I was the shit. I thought I knew everything there was to know about the position. You couldn't tell me nothing until you could. Until I got in there with people that had a philosophy. So that's what my first challenge to y'all is that you have to build a philosophy for your daily operation. What do you want to get out today? What is your succession plan for that day? Everybody has to have one. I have one. Everybody has to have one. Every time I step on this camera, every time I turn this camera on, I have a philosophy of what I'm trying to get out of this podcast, what I'm trying to get out of the day. So that's what you got to have every single day, no matter what you're doing. Even if you bumming it right now, even if you living in auntie house, even if you living at, mom's crib, you got to have a philosophy for what you want to get out that day. And it's really a simple task. It's a very easy request. It's a super easy request. All you got to do is you wake up. First of all, you give thanks and you write down what you want to get done today. Even if it's the littlest things. I just want to make sure I get to the grocery store to give auntie, moms, whatever they need, or I need to go make sure I, go and tell somebody I love them, or make sure that I go and show love to the bro. Anything that you can do, you write it down, and then make sure by the end of the day that operation was success. You check that off the list. But again, it's about having philosophy. And then that's what goes into my second point, where another thing that I thought about over the weekend was it's so funny. It's interesting because I watch a lot more podcasts, and I've been paying a lot more attention to like the pivot and things like that. I kind of try to gauge how I want the podcast to look. I kind of try to gauge how I want, excuse me, y'all. I try to gauge how much I want, how I want this thing to look, how I want, my podcast to kind of mimic, and not say mimic like I want to be like this podcast, but you become a leader by knowing how to follow, right? You got to be able to follow the right things to know how to lead. You can't just jump into leadership. You got to be a great follower to know how to then know how to lead and who to follow. So it's certain podcasts that I spend a lot more time watching because, again, when I begin my operation, I'm beginning it, thinking like, okay, I see what they did and I see how they kind of move, and I want to do something as similar as that, but I don't want to be that, eccentric, or, I want that kind of level of transparency, but I don't want to go too hard, like they do. So it's kind of like you just kind of picking, from other things. And it's the same thing. I mean, I'm going to use coaching a lot because that's just my background. Coaches do it all the time. Ain't not one coach that is just, I mean, you got to go back to like Bill Walsh to like look at like, all right, every coach is bit off of, and I say bite meaning like, they've taken from another coach's playbook. But again, plays are plays. They're always interchangeable and they're always recycled. How you do your podcast is, there might be people out there that do their podcast based off of what I'm doing. That's great. That's what this thing is about, sharing information. So in saying that, another thing that I thought about was I'm looking at, like, I see that it's so funny because I was looking about that, and I was also thinking about, the question about, well, when you get asked, what if you had to build, like for me, I see it all the time. Like if you had to build your perfect, quarterback, or you had to build your perfect wide receiver. And then some people say, well, if you had to build a perfect person, like, things like that. And I'm like, when people say all kinds of things, like when it comes to like, sports, like build your perfect point guard, somebody might be like, I want them to have like AI handles. I want them to have, Kobe mentality. I want them to have Jordan, clutch gene. I want them to have, Shaq's dominance, something, just little shit like that. And then when it comes to like another position, or it comes like a person, like I want to build like my perfect person, like, they're genuine and they're, they speak really well and they're educated, and we all do it. We all do it. I'm thinking about what my perfect girl would be like, 5'8", 5'7", 5'8", double degree, what I'm saying, 2-parent household in a sorority, preferably Delta. Shout out to the Reds. Got the dad in our life, and, driving a nice wheel, and, master's degree and just shit like that. We always do that. We always want to build our perfect person. But what I don't understand is when we talk about that and we're giving that type and we're giving that description, why can't we live by the descriptions we're given? Why can't the descriptions that we're talking about, we can't operate like that and be who we're talking about? Why can't we do that? Because I'm asking that question because I'm like, and I'm a victim. I say it all the time, is that this podcast is about transparency. So for me, I'm not about to sit up here and act like I'm different than everybody else and I'm the perfect person, because I'm not. I've had moments where I say, I want this person to be this. And, I think about, my perfect person, or this would be this work ethic, or this would be this bag that they get, and this would be this network they got. But why can't I get that? Why is it so easy for me to describe and for us to describe how we think somebody else should be, but then we not living by that? Does that make any bit of sense? And tell me if I'm wrong. Does that make any sense? Because a lot of us around here, and I'm not calling nobody out, but a lot of us around here are sitting over here with this Birkin, Louis mindset, but you got an H&M work ethic. A lot of us sitting around here, you got Rollie dreams, but you got a Burlington work ethic. A lot of us sitting around here want to drive. They want to cop the newest Benz. They want to cop the newest BMW. They want to cop the newest Trackhawk. They want to cop a Lambo, whatever, you know what I'm saying, a Wraith, or whatever this, all the popping celebrities is riding up right now. You want to cop all that, but you got a former mill network. Does it make any sense? How are you going to sit up here and disclose what you feel like somebody else should be, but then you're not living like that? And again, I'm a victim. I've been there. But I tell you one thing that I don't do. You will never accuse me. You might accuse me of a lot of things. You will never accuse me of not being able to put my own foot in my mouth and put in work. And I'll never point the finger at anybody. For me, I'm always going to point the thumbs. I'm never going to point the fingers. And that's what makes it uncomfortable for certain people to be around me. That's what makes it uncomfortable for me, in certain situations. Like I don't have a big circle of friends. I don't engage with a lot of people because it's uncomfortable when you got somebody that has that mindset. And it's no fault of theirs. They just doing them. That's just how they operate. But that ain't got shit to do with me. Because it's for what little that I do have, I've worked and got that little from not having that H&M mindset, not having that former mill mindset. See, some people, they got that Birkin and that Rollie and that BMW attitude, and in their brain and in their head, they think that's what it is, and they think that's what they're living in right now. But the paperwork ain't right. Wallow talk about it all the time. What's your paperwork? I'll pull my resume right now, and all you're going to see is pain. from having to really put in real work. And I'm, again, unapologetic about it. I'm super unapologetic about it, because for all the little that I've gained and the things that has happened and the hardships and all that has come to get to this point, that shit was all earned. It ain't like, and again, shout out to the spoon-fed niggas. Shout out to y'all. I mean, y'all was blessed. But at some point, just like in life, just like when you go to just like, we've all been in school, you go to the cafeteria. Sometimes you run out of utensils. You're going to walk out, you're going to be hungry. What you going to do? There's plenty of times that we walked into the cafeteria. You know what I'm saying? I went to a public school. We went to the cafeteria. Sometimes they ain't had no utensils. You had to finger food it. You either going to be hungry and feel sorry for yourself and blame other people, or you're going to make sure you eat and be unapologetic about it. Because at the end of the day, what's the goal? What's the philosophy for that moment? To be full. To not be hungry. And to me, that's where that's where my divide comes. That's where my separation from the left and the right come, because I don't have time to feel sorry for myself. I never had time to feel sorry for myself, because guess what? Time going to continue to move. Time going to continue to move. Regardless of whatever you got going on, guess what? After 60 seconds, you just lost another minute. You just lost a moment to do something different. So the longer you sit up here and drown in your sorrows and feel sorry for yourself, that's on you. And again, I just go back to my original point, is you got to have a philosophy for what you want to do. You got to have a philosophy. You got to have a daily operation. How do you want this day to end? How do you want to end? What do you want the end goal to look like? And then when, again, you're describing others and you're saying that you can build this perfect person, what are you doing to make sure that you're living by the person that you're trying to describe? Because it's easy to say, I want somebody to look like this and be like this and talk like this and have this, but you ain't got that. So who are you describing? That's why I talk to myself a lot. Honestly. That's why I talk to myself a lot, because I feel like I could go and sit on somebody's couch and let them try to tell me what they think is wrong with me, and I ain't shitting on nobody that's going to therapy. I heard a lot of good things about it, but me, I'm my biggest therapist. I'm the biggest self-reflection there is. Ain't nobody bigger, and it's absolutely free. I ain't gotta pay nobody, because you know what's crazy, and this might be a little controversial too. It's funny how you got to pay for somebody to try to fix your problem. Huh? So you mean to tell me I got to pay you to fix my problem? And don't get me wrong, I fuck with therapists. Like anybody that's going to therapy, shout out to y'all. You know what I'm saying? I know that a lot of people need that. It's necessary. And there's a lot of good people out here. And I look at therapists as servants. I don't know all of them. Some of them might be scammers, but for the majority that's doing it the right way, shout out to y'all. But I'm not paying for somebody to tell me how to fix me. Because again, this is the biggest tool known to man. And the only thing that can control this is me. And trust me, I've been in depression. I've had depression. It's a daily fight. And shout out to everybody that is going through, that is dealing with, some sort of depression, whatever it is. For me, I'm just letting you know right now that it is saying it's okay is just throwing water in a river. That means absolutely nothing, just to say it's okay. You definitely should go and seek help. But understand that when you watch this podcast and you watch or wherever you get your sanctuary from, you just know that you're on here, you're stepping on this ground for a reason. There's a reason that you're here. As plain Jane as that might sound, but there is a reason that you're here. And you should understand. You should understand. All that money you chucking aside to go and see somebody and sit on somebody's couch, that's fine. They might be telling you something you really need to hear, but you need to understand that the reason why you got into this situation that you're in right now is because what we trying to do, we meaning that the people that sit on the outside and the man upstairs, it is just a test to see how much you want it. What are you willing to do? Because guess what? You ain't the only one. And to me, that's why I say, I'm fine. I'll hop on this camera. I'll put these headphones on. I'll turn my camera on and I will speak to my people and let y'all know. If I'm in depression, I'm going to get right on this podcast and tell y'all that I'm in depression. And you're going to hear everything. But it's not you're paying, like, you're just paying somebody to get you out, to tell you about you. You know who you are. You don't need nobody to tell you that. You don't need nobody to tell you that you feeling you might need to go and search this or go and, figure this one out or go and talk to it. No, you know what you need to do. And see, that's where I get uncomfortable with some people, because some people can't handle that. The hard truth is a motherfucker. And that's why I love coaching. Boy, I love coaching. I miss it daily. Because the thing about football and sports as a whole is it will never lie to you. It will tell you exactly who you are. That's the greatest part about coaching. That's the greatest part about sports. That's why you're going to hear a lot of sports metaphors and comparisons in my podcast, because it's the greatest. I've learned so many life lessons about myself just by stepping on the field. It can't lie to you. If you some shit, you might think you the man. You might think you that bull, but you step on the field, the first time you get punched in your shit, it's going to tell you exactly who you are. It's going to wake you up. The first time you might be playing in the park with your homies, and you cross a couple people and you think you cool. Then you get on the field with other real hitters and you get smoked. It's going to tell you who you are. You thought you was the man. You thought you was the second coming, and you was the hood Mike Vick. And then you step on the field, and a DN come around the corner and blast your stupid ass. It's going to tell you who you are. That's why I love coaching, because it was a daily reminder that I couldn't be who I was yesterday today. I couldn't. If I brought that energy from yesterday, today, it was a wrap. Meaning that I had to wake up every day knowing that I had to be better. Going back to the first episode, just be 1% better. Because again, another thing about coaching is you're accountable to others. Like, it ain't nothing in it for me. This is for the guys that I got to teach. This is for the guys that are in other position groups, the coaches in other position groups. This is for them. So if I'm lacking, I'm bringing everybody else down. And then I take that same philosophy to life. I say, you know what? If I'm the same person I was yesterday or last week, I'm not making nobody better. And I'm not making this podcast better. If I bring the same energy from the first episode to this episode, I'm not making this podcast better. So with that being said, that's why my philosophy was I'm going to make sure that I step on this one with more energy than I brought in the first one, because there is no excuses. Because I'm not serving myself. I'm serving the masses. So again, you know, we got to work through this whole, okay, you got a perfect person. You see somebody that you want to, oh, this is how I feel like they should be. This is how I want them to look like. This is how I want them. Well, you bring that and that same energy. Because what you saying ain't making sense if you got this H&M work ethic. If you got this Burlington network. If you ain't putting in that pain, like I said, I got a sheet, resume, crazy big, all pain. All pain. You're going to see blood, sweat, and tears on that motherfucker. All pain. You ask about me, ask anybody that know me. Ask them. Ask anybody that know me, anybody that's ever been around me. The one thing they won't say, that nigga didn't work. That nigga didn't put in no work. Anybody, dare you, find them. And if they did say that, and if they did say put in work, tag them in this post. And I'll make sure we can get on the pod and we could chop it up so I can hear their perspective and what they thought about, you know, what brought them to that conclusion. But the last thing you're going to hear about me and you're going to say about me is I ain't putting no work. Respect is earned. I've been said that. It's cliche as hell, but it's the truth. Respect is earned. Ain't nothing given. So if you ain't putting in no work, if you ain't out here, if you out here, you know, with the fraud shit, talking about, oh, I'm doing this and I'm here, and you reposting all this shit about getting it and what my life is going to be, but yet you sitting on your ass every day, you moving backwards. You hustling backwards. You dead ass hustling backwards. So again, I'm just keeping it real. That's what this podcast is for. Podcast keeping it real. You hustling backwards. So I tell anybody that needs to hear it, have a philosophy with life, what you want to get out of it, what you plan to get out of it, live by that philosophy, and just like a resume, you can tweak it daily. That's the greatest thing about having it. That's the greatest thing about building a philosophy is you can tweak it daily. You could take something out and you could put something in. Have a philosophy, work at it daily, and the things that you talk about you want and that you want to manifest, live by it. Live by it. Don't just talk about it. Live by it. You're building a perfect person. Live by the person you're building. Stop having this H&M work ethic, but you want a Birkin. Stop trying to get a Rollie, talking about a Rollie, but you got a Foreman Mills network. You want to ride in some nice shit, but yet you clocking in at Wawa. You hustling backwards. You're hustling backwards. So handle your business and be unapologetically you. Handle your business and be unapologetically you. That's all I got for y'all today. Thank you for joining. Make sure you follow all the social medias. This will be dropping probably tonight. Remember, love is always love. I don't do this for myself. I do it for the ones who couldn't. OTM Coach B, signing out.